Hey, hey, how's it going?
Good, Cesar. Good to see you, man.
It's good
Happy
to be back.
Happy New Year, even though it's 3 months into it.
Yeah, probably we should say happy 2021. We haven't recorded in a while, so and happy
Yeah,
2022.
yeah, right. Uh-huh.
But we talk often, so that's it's always good. So,
Yeah,
what is up, Rick? What are you working
man,
on these days?
I've been so busy. Last year I went full time. Yeah, December a year ago, December. I went full time on fish rules. Just to kind of blow it up, to grow it because it was getting to
Mm-hmm.
the point where it's like we need to do something with it. We talked about this in another podcast. So went full time on it, and it's amazing how when you focus on something, you can make things go so far and so fast. So we really did. We grew a lot. We added lots of new features. We actually rewrote the app too, just for future um, proofing some things. And long story short, we actually got acquired. So actually, FishBrain, these guys right here, they
Nice.
acquired us. We signed the deal in December, did the deal, and now I'm part of FishBrain. And now Fish Rules and all the data and all the stuff that we have that we've offered our customers is now going to be part of FishBrain. So it's been a really crazy year last year, which
Awesome.
is really cool.
Hey, that's great. So, first of all, congratulations. Second, so what was the fish rules? Because I remember you working on that app for a while ago. So when did you start that? Like 2013 or so?
No,
2014?
before that, 2011.
2011.
Yep, we started
Okay.
2011 back in the accelerator days. Yep. Hmm.
So it took you 9 years to decide that you wanted to be full time.
Right. Yeah.
And then in a
Exactly.
year, you were like, "Oh yeah, great. We added a bunch of features, and we have a lot of more users." And then the opportunity came in, and you sold it. Awesome. That's, I mean, for I know you. It was always your side project, and it was
Hmm.
something that you used to keep yourself up to date. So, um, I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it was one of those like side hobby projects that turned out to be. We launched it, and all of a sudden, like the sheriff of the Keys wrote and said, "Hey, I'm going to put up on all the waterway signs, download fish rules." And we're like, "Oh, we hit a nerve there." And then we started getting all this interest. And it's like, okay, we're doing something. And all of a sudden, now the federal government or federal agencies wanted to partner, and then states wanted to partner, and um, so it's kind of cool how that happened with zero marketing spend. Like we didn't spend any money on marketing; it's all grassroots, and so it grew and grew and grew. So it's really cool to take something that's like a passion project and is useful for people, and then finding out it's actually useful for lots and lots of people and other companies. So it's been a great journey. I'm so glad we did it.
Yeah, I remember one of the last features was Freshwater, right? Where the app turns like kind of like green, so you have to theme it out, and that was nice. And then I guess it grew organically because you were solving an issue, right?
Right.
Having to carry your book, where I am, how many fish can I get of this type? I was just looking at one of the videos that you sent me, and it's like it depends where you when you took off in your boat. Like there are so many rules on that it seems crazy. So if you have like, hey, I have this, and I think
Yeah.
you added a service where you will identify some fish also in the last year, right? Like you will pay and you will have somebody, an actual human, identifying the fish
Right.
for you.
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and the
Awesome.
freshwater thing really helped us grow. Actually, it's funny. So we partnered with the state of Florida. They're one of our customers, and they said, "Okay, if we're going to partner, you have to add freshwater because we always had saltwater." And we did, and we actually grew that year when we added it. When was that? 2019, I think. We grew 40%. So,
Wow.
yeah, like we already had several 100,000 users, and then we grew 40% from that. So that was a big deal.
That's awesome. Like how different was it freshwater than saltwater? Like
So
technical speaking.
yeah, so your fish rules. It's geolocation aware, so it figures out where you're at, and it has all these spatial boundaries that sit on top of each other, and point and polygon algorithm to figure out, oh, you're in this one, and then that determines what regulations apply. And so Fish Rules handles all that for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Um, and uh, so with saltwater, there's lots and lots of polygons that you can be. You can be in Monroe County, but you're in the ocean. You could be in the Gulf or the Atlantic if you're in Monroe County, because that's the Keys. But then there's like a special permit zone. There might be a marine protected area you're in. So it's all this stuff. So that applies to freshwater too, but it's usually the polygons are much more simple. What makes um, what makes freshwater harder is that there's a bazillion lakes in some of these states, like Texas. They regulate a gazillion lakes, and they're all different. This one you can catch 2 bass, a largemouth bass, and this one you can catch 1, and this other lake you can catch 3, and then so that's what makes it harder, is that there's just all these different locations that are lake specific.
So it's a lot
Um,
of geo boundaries or geo
mhm.
fences that you gotta cross.
Yeah,
Okay.
and sometimes the states don't have the boundaries. They just say, "Oh, Lake so and so," and it's like, "Well, where's that at?" "Well, it's over here on the map," and it's like, "Yeah, but like legally, where's it at? Like, where's the boundary? Do you not have a boundary for the lake?" "No, we've never made one." So sometimes that's a problem. We end up making the boundaries, and in fact, some cases the agencies have asked us for the boundaries. So yeah, it's just how it
Okay.
is. Yeah,
Interesting. And
yeah.
then you have all the way from Maine all the way to Hawaii, you have regulations everywhere, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so, Maine to Texas, saltwater, California, Hawaii, Bahamas, US Caribbean, and then freshwater, we've got all the Gulf states, including Florida, and we just added Ohio this past month, and we added North Dakota last month, and we're adding more and more and more. And that's one of the cool things with the FishBrain partnership is, or them acquiring Fish Rules, is now all of those regulations will be available to their 14 million users. So now everybody gets that, gets all this regulation information, which helps with fishery sustainability and all that. Um, and then it enables us to move faster to add
Yeah, of course.
regulations for these other states, which is
So
great.
it's not only gonna be you doing all of that work, it's gonna be a team or something like that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, they are based in Sweden, I think,
Yeah, the
right?
main headquarters is in Sweden. They have a fish brain entity here in the United States. But
Okay.
yeah, the main company is in Sweden. It's in Stockholm,
Okay,
right
and
across from Spotify.
interesting.
Yeah.
So are the 14 million users like spread across the globe? Like, is this taking it to the entire earth, or is it mainly focused on US or some specific areas?
No, that's a good question. So I think it's like 10 million of our users are in the US, something like that.
Okay,
So,
a good 70%. Okay,
mhm, yeah.
awesome. All right, man. Congrats.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's been a lot of fun. It's drinking from a fire hose, as it is, as the saying goes, since December. So, but I'm excited to start this podcast back up. So, it's good.
Yeah, it's
New
about
year.
time.
Yeah.
Tons of
Uh-huh.
things in the backlog. We have a list of all the things that we want to do friction logs about, and they
Yeah.
just keep piling up, and we haven't been able to get them going. So it's always good. Hopefully, it's going to be a good cadence every week, every 2 weeks. But that's great.
So what have you been up to? I know you said I talked to you the other day, and you said you were using Carbon for some
Yeah.
things. And you know, it's funny. I remember when I was working at IBM, Carbon was just starting to be a thing, but they didn't have a React component library. They didn't have anything. It was just like the first idea. So what's that like working on that? What are you doing with
Okay.
that?
So I keep working mainly on the integration suite, right? So that's let's put it my half a day work, which is like all integrations and container native deployments and things like that,
Hmm.
OpenShift, Kubernetes, and stuff like that. The other half of it is actually making things efficient for our team. Like many big companies, it's spread into small teams, and those small teams have to be efficient. We're spread across the globe, so very asynchronous communication, and we happen to be using Trello, right? So there was this need to create a dashboard using Trello data to provide some visibility to other teams, to really control what we were working on, it's really hard because my team can spend like 3 months working in a Trello card, or it can be in 2 hours, right? Depending on how big things are,
That's really
who's the
funny.
customer, what's the product. So
Right.
trying to make sense of all of those metrics. Trello is awesome, but there is not really a way to visualize metrics out of Trello cards,
Right.
right? You only have the
Right.
list and you move them and stuff like that. So I started to build this product where in this initial release, I am pulling data from Trello, let's say overnight. I have the webhook API to receive updates. So once it's live, it can continue to go on and it's going to be more efficient.
Mhm.
It puts it into a MongoDB. With At that point, I'm already doing processing, right? So I'm following some patterns of bucketing and stuff like that. And then I have an API that I just built with Express.js. And then I have a Next.js app in the front of it. So the next JS app is I didn't have to worry about theming because, as you said, there is Carbon. Carbon is IBM's design language or design system, where it's very corporate-y, very enterprisey. So it's
Of
mainly
course.
like black and stuff like that. It is very square as well, not a lot of curves, but it is a design system, and everybody
Right.
that has used an IBM product has probably seen it. And even internally, a lot of tools use it. So if you have been into a public GitHub page that it also uses it. So there's it's just everywhere. So I just wanted to go and give it a try. And they have a React component. And it includes everything from the style guide, like the shell UI with the top bar and the left menu and stuff like that. It includes graphs, which is kind of amazing how they work. They actually perform fairly well. And it includes icons, right? Think about like hero icons and stuff like that. And all of it is component based. You just plug and play. So I'm having a
Is
role
it
with
your
that.
own, is it your own chart system, or do you guys use something else under the covers?
So far, it is a Carbon graph package. I don't know
Hmm.
if it's based on something else though. It is open source, so anybody can go and take a look at it. If you want to make an app that looks very IBM-y, you can definitely do it. I don't know who
But
is
does
doing
it
it
use
outside.
Tailwind, Cesar? Does it use
It
Tailwind?
does
That's the
not.
question. Okay.
Although
That's the only thing I care about. Okay.
wait, so I happen, even though it doesn't use Tailwind, I'm bad at CSS. Like I have never
Yeah.
been the best at CSS in general.
Right.
But the Tailwind, um, the website, right, with the documentation of everything, it's amazing to search stuff and
It
to
really is.
like
Yeah.
flex and stuff like that. So even though I'm not using Tailwind, I have it on the side and I kind of like know what I'm looking for on Tailwind, and I see what the CSS is and I just use that. So
Now that's really interesting. So wait, so you reference Tailwind's docs to write CSS for, man, that's so interesting. I wonder if you should ping the Tailwind guys and just tell them that. That's a really interesting side
it's
effect to having really good docs on your I don't know what they call it, the CSS utility, or I don't think they call it a framework, but that's
yeah,
so
it's
curious, huh?
because I mean I can use CSS and I think it uses by default as CSS.
Yeah.
So it's just, to me it's easier to search. Like if I look for CSS, there's obviously like CSS tricks and things like
Yeah.
that I can go and find. But as a good reference, Tailwind focuses on best practices for CSS, right, for styling. So and I have used them enough to understand like what I'm looking for there, and I
Mhm.
just revert like use the translations that they have. Not It's not reverse engineer, but it's kind of fun actually. It made things way simpler whenever I was trying to do some layouts. So
Yeah, that's so interesting, huh? I mean, it's like it's almost a study in like, hey, you write really good documentation or really good on a framework or utility thing, and people use it not for that, but for the
something
core
else.
parts. It's so interesting, huh?
Yep.
Hilarious, absolutely hilarious. Well, the thing is, I love Tailwind, and we just like what last quarter we redid our website and it's all in Tailwind. So I'm happy
Yeah.
about that. And
Once
in
again,
Next.js. It's all in Next.js, Tailwind, and we're using the MDX, the Markdown. What does the X stand for MDX? I don't even know. Extra. I don't know. Um,
I don't
but
know. I don't know
yeah,
what it
I'm,
means, but yeah, we have a new website up and running. I think it looks way better. Just in general, a little bit simpler. We got rid out of the CMS. We're now using just Markdown files, as you said.
Yep.
So yeah, anybody can go and check
That
it out.
MDX thing's pretty cool too, though, because you can. What you do is you um, register components, React components, and then you can use those React components in your Markdown,
Inside the
which
Markdown.
which is pretty cool. I'm a little worried about how that scales. So you have 10,000, 15,000 articles, and then
Hmm.
you switch systems. What happened? I mean, that's pretty rough. Um,
I think we can call it vendor lock-in maybe, but it is
yeah,
a paradigm lock-in, right? You have to go somewhere where MDX is going to be supported. That's a good point. Huh.
yeah. I mean, if you're trying to move off of it and move into something else, that is a nagging thing in my head. Is like, well, what happens when you'd have to write some parser or something and either remove it or convert it to wherever you're going.
And a lot of the blogs with a static site generation, they like you need to structure the files very well, right? They have a good folder structure, and it's one of the things that you never think about because every tutorial that you find is going to be about making a blog, and they just tell you to put it on a folder. But
That's
I
so
mean,
true.
we just have a couple of dozens, and you have to think like, oh, do I how do I organize this by year, by month, even though probably dates is not the best thing, but at the same time it's kind of great that you just store everything in GitHub and it just gets deployed out of it. So
Yeah, yeah.
pros and
That's the
cons.
power of it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that is not why we're here. We are here to talk about a friction log that you did the first time experience last quarter, actually, of a tool called fake.io.
Yeah, and I did. I just there's an article actually. If you can read my first time experience, that's on our website on frictionlog.com, and it was a pretty good experience. But since then, they've actually launched their. I think is it 1.0 they officially launched or whatever. So I was using. I guess it was a beta. I got a. It was one of those private invite things. So now that it's 1.0, we figured we'd give it a fair shake. And since you haven't used it, you did your own friction log. So real quick though, let's jump into it. So let's talk about what it is. So Fig.io, it's a CLI type thing, but can you give me a better description than hey, it's a new terminal? Like, what do you think it is?
So Fig.io to me is it's an VS Code autocomplete like tool for the CLI, right? For terminal or for iTerm or whatever you use. It gives you basically autocomplete, which we happen to be in the transition, at least everybody that uses Mac. We happen to be in the transition from, I guess, Bash to ZSH, which ZSH has a ton of plugins, and one of those are autocomplete, but it's different, right? You can actually have them working together. So that's how I would describe it. What it is to you,
Is
though.
that how they describe it? They describe it as like VS Autocode or
I
VS VS
VS
Code
Code autocomplete
autocomplete for yeah,
for the terminal. I think that's how they do it. Yeah, we'll
is
have to
that's how
check
they
the site,
describe
but
it?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
which
interesting.
makes sense. At
Yeah.
least their marketing was good enough that I remember.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. I mean, that's what stood out to you. That's interesting. I don't actually remember what their marketing site, how they pitch it, but I did reinstall it in this last week just to play with it some more, and hopefully I can keep it installed. Actually, in my friction log, I mentioned the blocker for me was the history just stopped working completely.
Hmm,
Um, but I had
interesting.
you hit up arrow and there was nothing. Couldn't I
Hmm.
like I reinstalled it. I did all, and I just couldn't get it to work anymore. So that's why I uninstalled it back in September. But I haven't had any problems now, so that's good.
When it was in beta, it was invite only. You invited me, I installed it, and I think I just had it running in my personal computer for a while. I don't use the terminal in my personal that much to really have been using it. That's why I consider what I did in the last 2 3 weeks first time experience.
Right.
Um, but because I also installed it in my work computer, which I found very good things that we're going to talk about it on the delights, of course. So, but never actually fail. There was one nuance, but I just restarted it, and yes, it's pretty good. So as you said, it's now available for everybody. Just go and download it, and it's actually pretty great.
Yeah.
Um,
So how does it compare to ZShell autocomplete? I'm just curious, like, because you said they can both run at the same time and they're for different use cases. Like, how does that work? Like, what's the? Can you give me an example of that?
so Fig will give you autocomplete with all the different options based on the tools, right? Which means they have to build some sort of plugin system to, let's say you have a visual CLI. So you can build a file that allows them to discover the autocomplete portion of it, which is pretty great.
Hmm.
ZSH has a, I believe it's called, the plugin is called Auto Suggestions, that basically uses your own history and gives you suggestions about what you're doing, right? So that is more like based on what you're doing as opposed to based on what the tool can do. So they can complement each other. And at, like, to some degree, if you are not careful, you can get confused between one and the other. Like, do
Mm,
I want to autocomplete or do I want to just hit tab and go to the command that I execute? But we, as developers, we happen to reuse the same commands over and over again. So the
right.
ZShell auto suggestion actually has worked pretty well for me since macOS Catalina, maybe whenever they start moving into that as the default one on macOS, right? Um, I actually disabled the auto suggestions on ZShell just because I wanted to give it a kind of like a try just fake by itself. And it was,
Let's.
I mean, so far so good.
I'm
I don't have any
literally gonna
complaints.
go open this right now and see if I did that or if it's a. I bet you I didn't do that, so I've got both of them enabled.
Yeah. Well, and then ZShell has all my ZShell plugins and themes and stuff like that. So there's plenty of customization you can do there. And I mean, I did a bunch based on what I read on the internet. I wouldn't claim to do it myself out of like, oh, I want to make my own theme and things like that. And it works. It works with it. It works pretty well. So um, who do you think it's for? I mean, obviously developers, right?
Yeah, I think it's developers. I mean, really just anybody who uses a command line. I think that's the persona, right? It's make typing easier in the terminal. What did you think of the install process? Because that was one of my delights when I tried it back in the fall. Was it was kind of like magic. It's like boom, 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 pick a theme, and it just works out of the box. It does some
It's
kind of
better.
weird, shady things under the covers. Like, wait, you touched my Z show and you didn't tell me. But no, I don't know if it still does that. But what did you think of the install process?
It's still super fast. It's like 5 clicks, and I think the only permissions that you gotta give is accessibility
Oh,
on
right.
macOS.
Yeah.
Um, so, but I mean, it does detect, like in my case, I have iTerm as opposed to terminal. It's what I use.
Hmm.
It detects it. I actually have it as a delight that whenever I did the last step and yeah, I went to try it out or to follow their tutorial on how it works, it actually opened iTerm as opposed to terminal, which I think they are good, assuming that um, everybody that installs iTerm probably doesn't use terminal. So I I'm pretty sure like they just check if the
That's a fair
executable is
assumption.
there.
Yeah.
But I mean, it feels great, right? You're taking already something that I like and you're adding to it, right? It works on both and it gets installed in both. So but it was pretty good. The one persona that we don't often think, I guess, is the DevOps people.
Mhm.
that use a lot of CLI commands and a lot of that. And I have some notes there on the lights once we get into that, thinking about that persona. That I think it's a good thing to go and try it out.
Right, right. Did now, one of my old friction logs that I put in as a friction for this was that it asked me to sign in with a work email. Um, you don't actually have to do that. Did they ask that again? I don't really remember.
They do ask for an email. I can't remember if it's at work or not, but it is a
Okay.
required step. And I actually have it as a friction myself because
Mhm.
um, there is no synchronization between the future. Like if I give you my email and I'm using it in three computers, then I would expect like some sort of like, oh, you have my account and my settings, right?
Mhm.
Which
Mhm.
they
Right.
don't. They don't do anything like I check what they are doing with the email. Mostly it's just marketing emails. They're trying to gather feedback.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So which is also another friction, right? So you sign up the first time, you put your email, you did your personal, they're not checking like public domains like Gmail and whatnot, but they send you like after like 3 days, they will send you an email like, hey, how's it going? Check this out. And then probably like after 10 days or so, they will send you an email saying, hey, would you like to share the feedback? Right.
Mm.
Um, I used the same email as I did the first time, and this is the work install was probably the third install. So I had my personal, then I switched the personal, and then the work. I always got the same emails. Like even though I'm using the same emails, their marketing system thinks that I'm a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
user. So
Yeah. Right.
um, I'm pretty sure that's something that can be easily fixed. It's just a little bit annoying. Like, do you know who I am or not? Because this is the third time that I'm giving you my email. So minor friction, nothing to do with the experience of using the tool, but
Mhm.
and I can only assume why they will ask for work email because I
Yeah.
guess having domains that are from companies, you can claim that they're using it, right? Think about my IBM email, right? They're saying, "Oh, somebody in IBM is using us," and they will
Well,
use
and
all
then
that
you're also it's easier to identify that you're a potential customer.
enterprise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I would do the same thing too. I would
yeah, I
definitely
wouldn't
do the
blame
same
them.
thing. Right. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All
So what
right, what else
about
you have?
so what about like let's get down into like the nitty-gritty. So my time when I used it, when I made the friction log, I wasn't at that time using um a lot of command line stuff because this was during the acquisition phase. So I just wasn't in it a lot because I was busy doing business stuff. But when I was, it was really simple commands. It was spinning up a couple servers, running our Fish Rolls is built in React Native, so running some React Native commands. It was really simple. Sometimes Cocoa Pods. It wasn't really heavy duty um, terminal work. But
Yeah.
like, how did you use it? Because
So
you might have different use cases. Because I know some of the stuff that you do is a little different than that.
yeah. So when you say I was doing business stuff, you were basically building PowerPoints as opposed to coding? Is that what you what you mean with business stuff?
It wasn't that boring. It was not that boring. It's kind of like it's. Did you watch the Meta announcement that Zuckerberg did?
I did,
Okay,
yeah.
you know the part where they're trying to get you all excited about Meta as a business thing, as like a work productivity thing,
A
and
workplace?
yeah, and so you have like the VR goggles on, and it's literally these virtual avatars presenting an Excel PowerPoint in virtual reality, and I'm like, well, it's boring in real life. Why would this be exciting in the metaverse? Like, wait, could we just reimagine this, please, to be exciting?
Yeah. It's like, Tim Cook whenever he talks about, like, building slides and in Keynote and stuff like that, like, in AR, and, like, what if the future is, like, you can see the AR charts all over there? I'm like, "No, that's not it wasn't fun before.
This is
It's
so
not gonna be fun."
boring. Can we think of another idea, please?
But I was doing no charts at all.
Yeah,
But,
right.
going back to your questions, I do like whenever like this project that I'm working on, right? I actually on purpose didn't put Mongo in a Docker image. So I'm running it in my
Okay.
machine. I'm running the Express API. I am running the Next client. And for the import process, the initial import, I run just a node script, right? So four things. Um, it's a good idea, but the next phase is deploying it, right? So it's all containers. And I
Sorry,
noticed some.
I get let me interrupt you. I'm just really curious right now. Really curious. Are you using Docker, like the Mac Docker app, or have you bailed from that?
I am. I don't know where this is coming from. I am actually trying to use Podman
Okay. All right.
because um I don't like I cannot say much, I guess. Docker, I know what we can say publicly, right? So Docker for Mac is now, if you use it in a company that it is more than, I don't know, 10,000 employees or something like that,
Mhm.
it is now in violation of terms of use.
Mhm.
That being said, I don't know if IBM owns licenses or not. But when those announcements started, probably like 3 months ago, I
Right.
know like nobody had it, right? Nobody
Yeah,
had an
like, I
enterprise
literally
security.
don't know anybody that's using it anymore. Like, it
Yeah,
went from everybody had it on their Mac to, like, overnight, nobody's using
yeah.
it.
So right now, they actually Podman released version 4, which would be an interesting friction lock if we think about it. So I might have some notes about that, but I'm
Okay.
trying to not
Yeah.
use it at this point. I think we now have an agreement just because it's IBM, and I'm pretty sure a lot of
Yeah.
people use it.
Right.
But some of my teammates, which you talk to on Twitter, were also moving to Podman. So yeah, I know where that was coming from. So it does have an autocomplete for, you can do an alias to Docker, and Fig will detect the autocomplete to build the image, which is actually pretty good.
That's cool.
Um, so that's good. But here's the thing: when I was talking about like DevOps or site reliability engineers,
Mhm.
I manage a lot of OpenShift clusters, right? Kubernetes,
Mm.
Red Hat version of Kubernetes. Um, and I always have like a concept of, for the people that are not into that, deployment is basically, you can set like 3 replicas of a Docker container running at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Each of those replicas will have a auto-generated ID
Yep.
attached to it at
Right.
the end,
Mhm.
which makes it really hard to debug pods or to see the status directly and things like that. You can do smart queries using the labels
Right.
that Kubernetes is doing, and there are many ways to do it. But sometimes you just have to go and look for one pod name. So what's interesting about Fig is you do like kube control get pod, and then you do space, and when the autocomplete brings it up, it goes and fetches whatever you have in your in your Kubernetes session, and it will
Oh,
show you
wow. That's
the
really
container
cool.
name or the pod
Okay.
names,
That's that's pretty sweet. That's
which
yeah.
it basically it turns two commands into one.
Yeah, 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 right.
So
That's amazing, huh?
yeah, so it does take into account the namespace you're on, right?
Mhm.
The project. So it also gives you all the other options, but it's kind of like it is twice as much as you would typically do.
Yeah.
Um, so that's my, like, if you want one reason and you work with containers in Kubernetes, you want one reason to try this out. That is my sales pitch.
I mean, that's pretty legit. That's great, huh?
And they
So
have a bunch of other plugins that I haven't tried. They do a lot of they do very good autocomplete on Git.
okay.
Not a lot of people use Git on the CLI. They will use like VS Code or Tower, like you and I, but
Well,
they
yeah,
do pretty
a
good
lot of people
autocomplete
do. I mean,
there.
it's happening, but do they do integrations like that too? Like you start doing git branch whatever or checkout, and it like auto figures out the branches that are available, the remote branches and all that. It does.
I
Okay,
believe so.
that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. So
Actually,
they're trying to go like one step, not just autocomplete for the sake of autocomplete, so,
yeah.
but instead in the context of where you are or what you're doing.
I just tried it. There it is. Yeah. It pulls it. It shows you all the remotes and all
Yep,
the locals. Okay. That's pretty sweet.
it is
I
awesome.
didn't even realize that. Huh.
So that's the gist of it. That should be enough for somebody to go and try it if they're watching this.
Yeah.
But I from your friction log, you contacted support at some point, and it was still a beta, so they were launching. What was the experience like? Because you have here
Yeah.
that it was right away, but
Yeah, it
was
was
it
like
nice?
almost immediate. I think one of the founders responded, and it wasn't just they answered the question or they addressed it or they tried to troubleshoot it, which that all happened, but it was also a follow up, and it was very high touch, which is good. Now that's what from if I put my startup hat on, you have to do that in a startup,
Yeah,
and you have to be religious about it, like psycho religious about it to build a good product. Um, so that actually stood out to me as a oh, they're really engaged on this, which means this will probably be a legit product. um, because of that. So that's always a good sign, you know.
yep, awesome. Glad to hear that. All right. Is there any other friction, the lights or blocker? I know you have that blocker when the history stopped working and it's
Mhm.
recorded on the initial friction log. I mean, that's fine. It was a beta product, but is there anything else you want to call out?
I'm trying to think what else blockers or frictions that I ran into. Um, I can't think. Well, I don't remember if they tell me this or not. But they do edit your ZShell file. Um, I don't remember them telling me that. And like when I just popped it up a minute ago to check the autocomplete on ZShell, it's up at the top and it's like commented, "Hey, this is for Fig," and everything else is fine. So they don't touch the rest of it, which is cool. But they have the thing at the top where they load their scripts and stuff. Um, so on one side, it's a delight because they figure all that out and they just do that for you, and it's magic, and you don't have to do anything. So that's cool, but I don't recall them telling me they did that, and because those RC files are so, kinda precious, it'd be kinda nice to know, "Hey, this is what we did."
Yeah. I'm looking at mine right now. So it actually does something at the beginning.
Right.
That's what you
Mhm.
were saying, and it does something at the end. So they prepend something
Mm.
and they append something at the end of the file as well. They do
It's
both.
it's all spyware is what it is, no.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess a lot of people are sensitive to that. It
Right.
would be nice just to know, right? Like what's happening
Mhm.
and things like that. But yeah, nothing like all my aliases and things that I have, they are there. They
Yeah.
just added something at the beginning and at the end.
Well, that was my first worry, like, when I installed it and I popped it open, I was like, "Okay, does is my ADB path still in there? Is my Cocoa Pods path still in there? Is my" like, I literally went through and which, just to make sure everything was there, and I'm like, "Okay, they must be using my config file," and then I opened it up and I'm like, "Oh, there it is at the top, okay." Oh.
Yeah. Did they take a backup of your no, they probably use ZShell RC file? I don't think so, right? Because
That's a good question. Let me see here.
that's that's the old way to do things, right? You will always take a backup, actually put it, copy it, and put a dot back. Um,
Oh, there it is, Z shell or ZRC backup. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where do you have the backup? I don't see mine.
ZSRC backup. Let's see. Let's cat this baby. See what it is.
I do have a backup, but it is before I install all my ZShell. They generate a file called .zshrc.pre-all-my-zsh. But I don't see one. They have a folder, a .fig folder, and a .fig.files back
Hmm.
thing as
I mean,
well.
maybe my .z shell rc backup. Maybe that was generated by something else, but I don't know why or what it would have been.
Yeah, autocomplete. I'm looking at the files. They have a bunch of things there.
Oh, yeah. There's a .fig .files .back. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one that I have.
There's nothing in that one. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. It's but anyway, the point is on it's like it's a coin. On one side of the coin, it's really cool that it just works and they figure all that for you. That's cool. Um, but then there's this nagging thing in the back of my head. It's like, what did it do? What's going on?
I guess just tell me, right? Like, hey, we're gonna add this. Like, in order for Fig to work, we gotta add something at the beginning of your config file, something at the end, just so you know. And that's the only thing we do.
Yeah, or maybe don't even tell you, just give you the option to find out, like, maybe because that right, that when you install that install experience and screen is so clean and so there's nothing that, like, it just feels easy. So if you had to, like, explain a bunch of stuff, then that starts feeling heavy. So maybe there was and we just missed it. Maybe there was something to find out what we did, I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's definitely a
Sweet.
thing.
Awesome. Well, that's today's tool. That's all I have on my end as well. It's always good to be back. It feels good to geek out on some of these things.
Back in black.
Yes, sir. All right. I'll talk to you next week. And well, we'll probably talk every day, sending weird tools that we gotta try it out, but we have a couple.
Cool. Alright, until next time.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yep, see ya.